She stood in my driveway like she owned the whole neighborhood, pointing at my truck. "That thing doesn't belong here," she shouted. I laughed, thinking she was joking. But 5 minutes later, her teenage son was behind the wheel, my wheel, and the engine roared to life. I ran out yelling, "Hey, that's my truck." He peeled off like he was in a movie. My heart dropped. I couldn't believe it. She was watching from her porch, arms crossed, smiling. I called out, "Karen, your son just stole my truck." She shrugged, sipping her iced coffee. "He's just moving it off HOA property," she said. My truck was registered, parked in my own driveway. I pulled out my phone and hit record. "You'll want to say that again for the cops," I told her. She rolled her eyes and muttered, "You people never learn." That line hit me hard. Minutes later, I heard a crash down the street, a loud metal screech followed by shouting. I ran toward it and froze. My truck had slammed into a tow truck that was parked by the corner. The tow truck driver was yelling, and Karen's son was still inside, terrified, trying to open the jammed door. I turned to see Karen running now, shouting his name like she hadn't sent him out there. The cops arrived faster than I expected. Karen ran straight to them, screaming, "Arrest him! He's attacking my son," pointing at me. I was still holding my phone, still recording everything. "Ma'am," one officer said, "he's the owner of the vehicle." Her face dropped. But before anyone could say more, one cop shouted, "Get back!" Everyone turned. The tow truck driver had handcuffed Karen's son to the back hook, yelling, "He tried to hit me!" The boy was crying, begging his mom to help. Karen lunged forward, furious, but the cop stopped her. I just stood there, breathing hard, still filming. That's when I whispered to myself, "You wanted drama, Karen. Now you got it." Karen's scream echoed across the street as her son cried, "Mom, please!" It wasn't my fault. The officers tried to calm her down, but she kept pointing at me like I had done something. "He set this up," she yelled. "He parked that truck to trap my boy." One of the cops looked confused. "Ma'am, your son took his vehicle without consent," he said firmly. But Karen wouldn't stop. She grabbed the officer's badge and hissed, "You don't tell me what's legal here. I run this community." Everyone stared. Even the tow truck driver paused. You could see it on her face. She truly believed she was untouchable. I took a slow breath and said quietly, "No, Karen, you just run your mouth." One officer asked for my ID, so I handed him my wallet. As he read my name, his eyes shifted. He looked at his partner and nodded slightly. Karen caught that and scoffed, "What now? You're not going to believe this guy, right?" The cop turned to her and said, "Ma'am, you should calm down. You're already trespassing on private property." That's when the first real twist hit. The officer leaned closer to me and whispered, "Sir, you're the same Robert Mills from the DA's office, aren't you?" I nodded slowly. Karen froze mid-rant. "D District Attorney?" She stammered. "That's impossible." I turned my phone camera toward her and said calmly, "You really should have checked who you were messing with before you sent your kid to steal my ride." Karen's eyes darted everywhere. "You can't prove anything." "The HOA says—" She stopped when one of the officers interrupted. "Ma'am, there is no active HOA enforcement in this area. The charter expired 2 years ago." Her face went pale. "What?" she whispered. I showed them my video, the full clip of her son driving off, her admitting it, her fake HOA speech. The cops watched it in silence. When it ended, one of them sighed and said, "All right, we've got enough." Karen suddenly turned desperate. "You can't arrest my boy." "He didn't mean to." But the officer interrupted. "We're not arresting your son, ma'am. We're detaining you for filing a false report and obstruction." As they cuffed her, she screamed my name like a curse. "You think this is over, Robert? You'll regret this." I looked her dead in the eyes and said softly, "I already did the moment I moved in next door." They took her away that night, but by morning, she was back. Standing in front of my driveway again, arms crossed, hair messy, eyes burning with rage. "You think you won, huh?" she said, her voice low but shaking. "You embarrassed me in front of the whole neighborhood." I didn't answer. I just kept washing the front of my truck, pretending not to care. She stepped closer. "You know what happens when people cross me?" I finally turned, the hose still running. "You lose again?" I said quietly. That made her snap. She stormed toward her house, muttering something about teaching me a lesson. I knew it wasn't over, but I didn't expect what came next. Later that evening, as I stepped outside, I noticed papers taped all over my door and mailbox. Notice of violation.
Vehicle theft investigation.
Pending. Unauthorized resident. Alert. Community fine. $3,500. They all had the same fake HOA letterhead. I laughed under my breath. She was doubling down. I walked over to her porch, camera rolling again. Karen, I said, you do realize falsifying legal documents is a federal offense? She smirked. Oh, please. Who's gonna believe you? Everyone here thinks you're some fancy liar trying to play DA. Then she added, unless you really aren't who you say you are. That line hit me like a dart. She had done some digging. What are you talking about? I asked carefully. She grinned. I looked you up. There's no Robert Mills listed as an active DA in the county. I froze. She was right. Because that wasn't my real name anymore. I sighed and stepped closer. You're right, Karen, I said quietly. That name belongs to a man who used to work in prosecution. Until the FBI pulled him into witness protection. Her face dropped. What? You wanted a war, I said, my voice calm, steady. You just picked the wrong soldier. For a second, she didn't move. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Then she whispered, you're lying. I smiled faintly. You really want to find out? Her confidence cracked. She turned and rushed inside her house, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. I stood there in the silence, the only sound being the dripping hose on the concrete. But deep down I knew this wasn't fear. It was just her regrouping. Karen wasn't done. She was planning her next move. The next night, I woke up to flashing lights outside my window, red and blue bouncing off my walls. I rushed out to find 3 police cruisers lined up in front of my house. Karen stood there in her robe, pretending to cry. Officer, that's him, she shouted. He threatened me. Said he was with the FBI and had guns in his basement. I walked out slowly, hands raised, phone recording again. Evening, officers, I said calmly. One of them, the same guy from before, looked confused. Mr. Mills? What's going on? Karen jumped in, waving her hands. Don't call him that. That's not even his name. He's dangerous. The lead cop turned toward me. Sir, mind if we step inside? I nodded. Sure thing. Just know every corner of my house is under surveillance. Karen's face twitched when I said that. Inside, the officers found nothing. No weapons. No illegal papers. Just my law certificates and security setup. One of them even smiled and said, cleanest house we've seen this week. But then one officer checked the basement door. The latch was broken. Karen shouted from outside, see? He keeps people down there. The officer opened it slowly and froze. There was someone down there. A man tied to a chair. Karen's face lit up like she'd just won the lottery. I told you, she screamed. The cops drew their weapons. Sir, step back. I stayed calm. You might want to take a closer look at who that is, I said softly. The officer stepped down the stairs, shined his flashlight, and gasped. That's not a hostage. That's one of ours. They untied the man. He stood up, rubbing his wrists, then turned to me and said, sorry, boss. She followed me when I came to return the files. I didn't want to blow your cover. Karen's smile vanished. Boss, she repeated. The man pulled out his badge. Federal Investigation Unit, he said, flashing it toward the cops. Karen took a step back. Wait, what? What is this? I looked straight at her. You wanted to expose me? Congratulations, Karen. You just exposed yourself on a federal sting. The officer beside her whispered into his radio, and within seconds, 2 unmarked cars pulled up. Agents stepped out, walking straight toward Karen. One of them handed her a paper. Ma'am, you're under arrest for harassment, falsifying documents, and interference with a federal investigation. Her jaw dropped. You can't do this. I'm the president of the HOA. The agent didn't even blink. Ma'am, this neighborhood doesn't have an HOA. As they cuffed her, she screamed again. You set me up. I just stood there, arms crossed, and said quietly, you did that all by yourself. By morning, the neighborhood was silent. The gossip spread faster than wildfire. How Karen, the self-proclaimed HOA queen, got hauled away by federal agents in her slippers. People who used to avoid talking to me were suddenly waving, bringing over muffins, pretending they'd always known she was trouble. I didn't care for the attention. I just wanted peace. But peace doesn't come easy after a storm like that. The next day I received a plain envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single photo, Karen sitting in an interrogation room looking broken. On the back, someone had written, "She didn't act alone." I stared at it for a long time. Then my phone buzzed, a message from the same federal agent who'd been tied up in my basement during the sting. "We found something." Her son's laptop had HOA financial records, millions in fake fines. She was laundering through a dummy trust. I leaned back in my chair and whispered, "So this wasn't just about me." Later that evening, I drove to the same spot where she'd once screamed at me for parking. Too close to the curb. The street felt different now, quiet, lighter. As I looked at the empty porch where she used to stand, I couldn't help but feel something strange. Not victory, not relief, just understanding. When people like Karen abuse power, it's never really about rules. It's about control. And sometimes, the only way to stop them is to let them hang themselves with their own lies. A reporter caught up with me a few weeks later. "So, Mr. Mills," she said, "why didn't you reveal your real identity sooner?" I smiled slightly. Because sometimes the truth works better when it surprises the wrong people. She laughed softly. "And what happened to Karen?" I looked past her across the quiet street where a "for sale" sign now stood in front of Karen's old house. "She's learning what real rules look like," I said. "The federal kind." The camera light blinked red. The reporter lowered her mic. "One last question," she said. "If you could say one thing to her right now, what would it be?" I paused for a moment, then looked straight at the lens. Don't mess with a man who built his own land and knows how to defend it. And just like that, the story that started with a stolen truck ended with a lesson that spread through every porch and driveway in the neighborhood. Never mistake silence for weakness.